specifically in South Africa, our police are poorly resourced, specifically when it comes to fighting crime, when it comes to things like analysis, even detective work these days. And for many years, we've all been doing fantastic work catching poachers, but as soon as the poacher ends up in the realm of the police, everything falls flat. We actually have a specific unit focusing on things like rhino poaching that are sitting with 76 cases at the moment over the last few years, and not one of them has been successfully closed. So it is a big gap. So that's where we came in. And we've been using SMART to do that. We also work very closely with all the APUs in the area and private reserves to do so. So we use SMART, and specifically the one section I'm going to speak to you about today is SMART profiles. So I know obviously everyone's been looking largely at EarthRanger over the last week, and there's this new partnership now between SMART and EarthRanger. And this is just to show you some of the aspects that SMART can do that you can actually build in. So we use both SMART and EarthRanger and how you can combine them. So looking, obviously, sorry that I've told you that. So looking at what we do with data, there's a process that's involved in developing analysis and intelligence reports. And the first one is obviously data collection. And data collection is obviously through your resources like your EarthRanger mobile or Smart Mobile. Data collation, and that would happen either in Smart Desktop or in EarthRanger program itself, desktop program. And then from either of those programs, you'll do initial analysis, and that can be done either through queries or just producing reports or profiling. And from there, it would go to distribution to whoever it is, whether it's your decision makers, your law enforcement, etc. So what we're looking at here in this is this section here on profiles. This is a big part of what we do. Okay, so what is profiling, and what is the purpose of profiling within the realms of intelligence? Okay, profiling is also most commonly known as offender profiling or criminal profiling, and just really because it's used mostly in the law enforcement field. What I'm also going to show you, though, at the end of this, although we're going to primarily look at it within the context of law enforcement, I'm also going to show you how you can use it for conservation, because the way that SMART has developed this, you can just as easily use the whole process of profiling in resource management, in species management, etc., and I'll show you how we go about that. So profiling is one of the investigative strategy tools, as I showed you, and it's used by law enforcement to record suspect details or identify likely suspects and link cases together. Okay, the profiling section of SMART is what enables us the process of profiling. And as I said, although primarily suited to law enforcement activities, due to the flexibility of SMART, it can also be used for conservation and resource management objectives. So if we look at SMART profiling, we're going to look at it today within the concept of law enforcement, but we'll also look at the conservation purposes. And if we have a look within the profiling section of SMART, there are two main components that you mainly work with. Okay, and that is new entities and records. An entity will be anything that you're wanting to monitor and follow. So, sorry, let's just let the others come in. No, don't worry, don't stress. We just basically looked at the background of what is profiling and how it fits in. Okay, so an entity would then be anything that you're wanting to follow. So it could be a suspect, it could be a suspect vehicle, it could be a location, it could be even a record, a case number. It could be a type of activity. So I have got entities such as ESU pangolin poaching. Oh, forgive me, somebody's trying to send me something in SMART right now. Look at that. And now it's not showing up here, so I'm going to have to just come out quickly. And now nothing's showing up. Okay, so let's just go to where we were. I'm just going to actually close SMART down so that it doesn't do it again. And we'll go from there. Sorry. I've obviously my team sending me stuff as it is. Okay, so an entity can be anything. As I say, I have got, I've even, apart from just the suspects, I've even got entities as a type of crime. So we monitor from cash and transit heists to rhino poaching to pangolin poaching, and those are all individual entities. We also, I even have roles in a syndicate. So I've got an entity as a shooter, a transporter, etc. So I can also pull off information of all of those entities, and you'll see how that all works just now. Then you've got a record, and a record is your information that you're sending through to an entity. So it could be an observation, it could be, a record could be an example of Joe Bloggs was seen meeting Mr. X at such and such a location. And that's a record, an intelligence record that you actually want to then link to their profiles. And we'll have a look now at how that's done. So here we've basically said entities can be anything from locations, persons, vehicles, roles in syndicate, crime types, recorded cases, or if we're looking at on a conservation perspective, it could be bush clearing sites, it could be individual animals, it could be indicator plants, basically anything that you're going to want to monitor and follow. Record, as I said, is what the information that we want to link to an entity. So Mr. X and Mr. Y were seen talking together at the side of the road at night. So Mr. X is your entity, Mr. Y is your entity, but that whole sentence is your record. Intel received that Mr. X has just purchased a new vehicle 1 month after he was fired and has been out of work. So obviously Mr. X again is your entity. That whole sentence is your record. Okay, so I think we can see how entities and records work together. Okay, so what we've done is I've drawn up a few entity profiles here, and we're going to look at some suspects. Just so you can see what goes into an entity profile. So here's a profile I've put together on Mickey Mouse. And something I will tell you is, as I say, I work a lot with the Hawks. In fact, all of my work goes directly to the Hawks. And they have said that never in the history of their operations have they ever seen profiles as well displayed and as complex as what SMART develops. So that is one thing. And even there are a lot of more advanced intelligence analysis programs like Analyst Notebook, Sentinel Visualizer, Cortex Edge. But even the profiles that they pull off there are not as well laid out and easy to read, but as comprehensive as what SMART delivers. So it's something really worth considering. And even when we work further on advanced analytical programs, we will always do our profiling in SMART for this very purpose. So you'll see what there is when you look at the SMART, at the profile. You start off with your attributes, and you create these attributes. So you decide what it is that you want to look at, and we'll have a look now at what I've put in my attributes. Then you've got your attachments, so any attachments, whether it be photos, spreadsheets, PDFs, anything that links to that person that you want to keep linked in his profile will also be added there. This is relationships, so when you've created relationships between entities, they all show up here in a table. And then here are all your intelligence records. So every record that we've created where we've linked to those entities will show up here. So, and we'll have a look at those a little further. So let's just look a little closer at this. Why is this not working? Anybody have any ideas why this wouldn't work? I'm going to do it from here then. Oh, so this doesn't want to work either. Where's our techie guys? Anybody have any idea? Let me see if I exit it. Sorry about this. Let's see if this will work. Okay, so looking at, let me just see if this is, yeah, there we go. We're back in action. Okay, so looking at our Mickey Mouse profile, these are attributes that I've created. So I've said this is when I'd have a person profile, this is what I want to see on his profile. I've got his full name, which I've said there, Mickey Mouse. Just out of interest, industry standard is you always put the surname in capital letters, because when you're dealing with, specifically when you're dealing with different cultures and you don't always know names and surnames, it's very difficult to know which is a name and which is a surname. So if you've always got your surnames in in capital letters, then it's easy to work with. I'm going to just do it that way. If it doesn't want to shut down normally, there we go. Okay, now we can. Sorry, obviously the team's very busy back home. Okay, so we've got full name, we've got an alias, he's also known as Mick, any alternative spelling, because remember when you're going to search through something, your database is going to search through words. If somebody spells it incorrectly, you still want to be able to pull up that he's a potential suspect linked to it. I've got his ID number, we've got any identifying features, so he's got his very large, round, black ears. His primary known residence is Disneyland. Additional residence is also Disney World. Any known crime links, so he steals people's hearts. Suspected crime links, creating fantasies. And then any syndicate affiliation, so he's affiliated to the MacDuck Corporation. And then notes, I always put in notes as to where did we identify the suspect first, so I know immediately how to link him. But you can create what you need as your attributes for your initial attributes section. And then at the bottom here, you can see will be all contact details. If we look at the next page, as I say, there's attachments, and these are obviously all things we've attached with the records. These are your relationships. So here you can see Mickey Mouse is related to, or he's got a relationship with Donald Duck, and they associate through criminal activity. And here it says, intel received indicating that both Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck are both actively involved in stealing young children's hearts in the there you go, Anaheim area, of course. All right, so there you can see how the relationships all work, and again, how you've created your relationships will have these tables, and we'll have a look at that just now as well. And they're your records. So these are Intel records that have come in. So you can see here it says confirmation has been received of Donald, Mickey, and Goofy all being affiliated and are good friends. That's an Intel record somebody sent through to us. Or Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, and Goofy were all witnessed on holiday together in the Fantasia farmlands. Photographic evidence was supplied, etc. Okay, so those are all then linked through to Mickey's profile when we pull it off. So anybody reading that now can get a very good detail of who Mickey is, what he's been involved in, who he's been linked with, etc. Okay, just a quick one. There's Donald Duck. So there's Goofy, so you can see it will all be the same. We've got the same aspects for each one. Then here's a different one. So this is a vehicle profile entity that I created. And obviously here you're going to see we're going to look at slightly different things. So here what I've done is I've said I want the registration, I want the vehicle type, the make, the model, the color, additional features, the VIN number, the engine number, who's the registered owner's ID, etc. Okay, so those are the things that we'd put to a vehicle profile. Again, there's your this is a location one, and you can see it's slightly different. Again, here I've got what's the location's name, what type of location is it, what's the address of the location, the description, longitude and latitude points, and what's the suspected activity that occurs at that location. Okay, and again, as I say, you can create what you need. That's just how we've created it. All right, so let's look at creating records. Records are the things that you're going to use most often once you've got your entities developed. And as I say, record is then when you get information coming in. So if we had to look at this one, for instance, this is information that came in. And as I said to you, we read it previously, Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, and Goofy were all on holiday together in the Fantasia farmlands, and photographic evidence was supplied. So what we would then do is we then add the entities that it's linking to. So Mickey Mouse is there, Donald Duck is there, and Goofy is there. And there's the attachments. I can then also link that attachment to those entities so that now when I pull off Goofy's profile, it's got that intelligence record and it's got the photo attached like we just saw. So it's very simple and very easy that how once you've got your record coming through, how you then can attach it to different entities. Okay, same thing here. You've got confirmation received, Donald, Mickey, and Goofy. And again, there they all are. And there's the photos of them all being good friends and playing around together. And again, we've attached it to those entities. So when we pulled those off, that's why we saw those photos in attachments. Okay, movement of Donald Duck's vehicle. Red Ford Mustang with the reg was noted driving repetitively in and out Disneyland on the 4th of March 2022. It's not known what he was doing. However, timing is suspect and worth noting or recording. So again, here we're going to add it to our entities. We've got Donald Duck, we've got the vehicle, Lightning McQueen, and we've got Disneyland. So we can add it to each of those entities. So when we pulled off each of those entities, that record comes through as well. Okay, so you can see it's very easy how you can take your Intel records and you can link them to an entity. Okay, so if we actually look at the bones of how we do that within Smart and just how easy it is, before you are able to set up all your entities and your records, you need to configure everything. As it is with all of these platforms, you need to configure them as to what you need and how you need to do it. And this is also very easy within Smart. So if we have a look at the configurations, when you open up the configurations, you've got attributes. So this is that attribute section where you'll create what you want under each type of entity. Is it the name, the surname, the ID number, or is it the type of vehicle, the vehicle model, vehicle make? Those are all your attributes. You've got entity types. So that's, we've had a person type entity, a vehicle type entity, a location type entity. You've got your relationship groups. So you'll have it either be grouped under associations and syndicates or criminal involvement or investigations. However you want to group it, you'll create those. Your relationship types are also then, you've got to create what kind of relationships are between each other. So I'll have a relationship between a person and vehicle, and I'll create two relationships. The one will be that vehicle is registered to that suspect, and the other will be that vehicle is linked to that suspect. So if it has got his personal details, it's registered, and if it's not, but I've just seen him in the vehicle or driving the vehicle, then obviously I'll just say it's linked to it, and I'll create a note to say, how is it linked? So you'll create your relationship types. Also, record sources are very important. So where did that information come? And obviously, this doesn't mean we put the source's name. We all know keeping confidentiality of sources, particularly with sensitive information, is crucial. But we will say it was from a registered informant, or it was from a Section 205 report, or it was from another police officer, or etc., reactive incident, whatever it might be. So you record that. And then we can also look at diagram styles, which I will show you. Smart does have the ability to create a spider web for you. It's not as complex and as functional as some of the bigger programs, but if you can't afford a bigger program, you can do it in Smart. So I'll just show you how you can do that. Okay, and then the other section, which is a new section to Smart 7, is you can also create profiles, so profile types. So you can see here I've created a group for all my Disney sample profiles. I've also created one for general crime, for organized crime and endangered wildlife trade, and then basic profiles, anything that's miscellaneous that doesn't fall within those groups. And I'll obviously then group my profiles within those categories. Okay, if we look at attributes, you get a table to create your attributes, exactly like you do in Smart if you're creating a data model. For any of you that are using Smart, you'll do exactly the same. You'll create your attributes. You obviously, to the best that you can, you want them to relate or mirror your main data model as much as possible, but it's not crucial because you will data map them at the end anyway if you need to bring across from one section to the other. But there's where you'll create your attributes that you want for each of your entity types. Here you'll create your entity types, and you can see here I can say, all right, I'm creating a person attribute, and I expect to see it in every single one of my groups. Or the criminal activity type, I only want to see it in those groups. So you also have got flexibility as to what entity types occur in what groups. Okay, here are your relationship groups you'll create. As I said, you've got broad groups that you create, association and syndicates or criminal involvement, etc. Here are your relationship types. So you can see I've got lots of different relationship types. And you've also got to create you might create the same relationship type, but you've got to duplicate it if it's between profile groups. Okay, so that is something that because this is a new section to SMART, it is something that I have asked them that we need to review, because it actually does make it fairly clumsy. But hopefully that will then come down to, doesn't matter what profile group, it's a relationship between one entity and another. Right, here's your recorded sources. So you can see I've added lots of different recorded sources that our information comes from. It could be an Act 70 sourced information. It could be from an additional safety officer or APU member. It could be from an apprehended suspect himself. So he's told us after we've arrested him, he's given us information. It could be from border crossing records. It could be from a camera trap, WPS, or camera trap for either source. It could be CCTV footage, etc. So depending on where we've got the source that information from, I've created a record source that I'll attach to it. Okay, and then your relationship styles. Just to show you this, as I say, SMART does have this ability if you do need it. It doesn't work as well as all the bigger programs, but it does give you this ability. So it is quite nice if you can't afford the bigger programs and you've got SMART, you have got this ability. So here you can see I've chosen Goofy, and I've said show me all the relationships to Goofy within 1 degree. And here you can see is all the relationships. And if I change it, I could then say, okay, show me to 2 degrees. There, I've changed it to 2. Then what it does is it shows me everyone that's related to Goofy, and then the next degree off is everyone that's then related to those people that are related to Goofy. And obviously, the more I extend it, the more you can continue. But that's quite a nice linkages, or gives you a nice linkages ability, so you can see how things are linked to each other and how individuals and suspects are linked to each other. Okay, the other nice thing, as I said, you can create your own profile template. So those entity reports that I showed you, I've created. That's how we've laid them out. And you can go and create them. Obviously, put your own color, put your logo, put any other additional information in that you want to put it in. So you would do it just like you do on your report section. It's very similar. You would first of all choose we go back here. So you choose Edit BIRT templates. This would open up. You'd click on template view, choose which one. So here are all the different templates I've got: criminal activity type, location of interest, person, or pre-investigation or linkages or concerns, recorded cases, a role in syndicate, SAPS inquiries, syndicate group linkages, or vehicle. So I choose which one, and it would then come up. And those of you that have worked in SMART and developed reports, you'll recognize that. It's the same layout in creating your reports in SMART. So you can come up. I, for instance, have put that in because that's important for me. If I'm sending it out, people must know it's not to be shared. And then, obviously, I bring in all the other elements that are part of the information that you collect with your entity profile. Okay, so it also gives you, just to show you, you've got the full ability to create your entity profile as you want it. Okay, then the other nice thing that there is that you can create triggers from your observations. So even if you are using EarthRanger to collect your data, you can connect EarthRanger to SMART. So all of that data that you connect in EarthRanger can come through to SMART. When it comes through to SMART, you can then go and create triggers that then loads it to the profile section. So the profile section, it's a plug-on, it's an add-in, and it's almost like a program within a program. It's a separate section within SMART that you can then say that you want that information to go through to your profile section. So what that does is everything that gets loaded doesn't automatically go through, because it's not all intelligence records, and you're going to spend your life cleaning and deleting what's not intelligence. But you can create triggers that'll say that if a certain word is mentioned or name is mentioned or observation is received, you want it to go through to the profiles section, because it'll more than likely be intelligence. So that's a great feature that actually links what your field rangers are picking up in the field or it might be through other sensors, and you can link it directly through to your profile section and add it to your entity profile. So to configure records, you go into field data, and I know a lot of people, you see this question coming up often on Smart. Most people don't know what that's about, and everyone's asking, what are system triggers? Now you know. System triggers are to create a link between your field data and your profile section. So you can, for instance, you can say, trigger example, that when an arrest is made or recorded, so whether it be in EarthRanger or in Smart, a person entity is then created. Because obviously you've created an arrest, you want to now start profiling that person. You could also create a trigger that says when an arrest is recorded, a recorded case entity is made. So you can also start following that entity. You can also say when an observation is recorded, for example, a poached rhino, a record is created, okay? Or you could even then use words. So you can say if the words poacher, poach, poached, or poaching is used in the notes or any other of your attribute sections of an observation or an event, as you would call it in EarthRanger, that it would then create a record and it would go through to your profile section. Okay, when it comes through to your profile section, it'll all come through on this side here. You would then choose your data processing mode in profiles. It'll all come through here, and here you can see you've got unprocessed, in progress, and then all. And what this is when you get the record through, so it'll come through, it'll look like this. Here you can see I've got the title, and I normally change that to something that makes sense for me, the date that it's recorded. This is the group that it's the entity group, so this belongs to organized crime. And here you can see it says unprocessed. As soon as I change that to in progress, it'll then move out of this block and it'll fall under that tab. So I can also keep tabs as to what stage that record is, if there's still more information I want to add to it and work on it, or if it is now completed and it's linked to an entity. Here you can see is where I add entities. So all I do is I say add, I go look for the entity and I add it to this particular record. Here I would add the attachments, and same thing, I then go and use standard browser on your computer, look for the attachments you want to add to that record. If they don't, if they're not added already through your event or observation that you've created, and you could also then go and link each of those photos to either of those three entities as well that you wanted to. So you can see how quick and easy it is to take information and link it to an entity. Okay, so let's look at the full picture. So to really understand how this all ties together, we've seen how we can use it within the law enforcement field. And as I say, this is our bread and butter. I think I'm probably sitting at the moment of individual entities, people. We're probably looking at about 300 to 400 key target suspects that we monitor. We've probably got about 250 suspect vehicles that we monitor. So we just keep detailed records on information on all of those people. But if we have to look at this now, let's have a look within the conservation arena. So we might then look at entity types such as animals, which we'd have Rhino A, Rhino B, Rhino C, or you might name them, or however you identify your animals. We could have management interventions, which we could create entities for. So it could be something like dehorning, it could be ear notching, it could be radio chipping. We could also do entities for medical interventions. So it would be blood tests, injury treatment. Then obviously relationship types between them would be possibly mated with, so Rhino A mated with Rhino B, or conducted on, which would be blood tests were conducted on Rhino A, or Rhino C. Injury treatment would be Rhino B, or Rhino A was dehorned, Rhino B was dehorned, Rhino A had ear notching done, Rhino B had ear notching done, and obviously you would describe the ear notching and put in diagrams. Rhino C also had ear notching done. You could say inserted in. So Rhino B had a radio chip inserted in it. So those are just the different relationships you'd create. Records, we could have a record. Rhino A was noted mating with Rhino B, and obviously then we would link both those entities to that record. We might have price of blood tests doubled in the last month. That might be something you want to record, and you'd obviously link it to the blood test entity then. Rhino C was found with injuries and treated by Dr. Rogers. Full blood tests conducted at the same time and attach and link photos. You would then take that record, you would add Rhino C, you would add injury treatment, and you would add blood tests because all of those entities link to that record. You could have a record dehorning conducted on Rhino A, 2.3 kilogram horn removed, stored with ZA number 426. You obviously would link it to dehorning, and you'd link it to Rhino A. And then another option, radio chip inserted in horn of Rhino B with chip number XYZ. You'd obviously link it to radio chip and to Rhino B. So now what happens is if I pull off the radio chip, I'm going to get all the basic information that I've put on that radio chip. But what I'll also do is I'll also then get this record will show up on it, for instance. The relationship with Rhino B will come up, for instance. So you can pull off a profile on all dehorning, and you can then get a record of all the dehorning that you've done in the reserve and everything that's linked to it. Or you could pull off a record on Rhino A, and you could then get all the details and observations that have linked to Rhino A. So it doesn't matter which way you use it, you're then getting a full record of everything that's linked to it coming through. Does that make sense? Okay, and again, this doesn't want to move. There we go. Okay, if we look at it, resource management, similar, we could say problem areas could be one of our entities, and we could then have names of different areas on the reserve, Savuti Plains, Block C, Pell's Loop. We could then have corrective measures, could be an entity type, and we could then have entities such as bush clearing, gabion construction, mattress packing. We could have indicated species, could be an entity type, and we would then have Dicrostacus cinerea, Terminalia ceracea, and then relationship types might be occurring in, so Dicrostacus cinerea occurs in Savuti Plains, or Terminalia ceracea is occurring in Block C. It could be cleared from, and again, Dicrostacus cinerea cleared from Pell's Loop, or implemented in, bush clearing implemented in Savuti Plains, Block C, etc. So you can all get the idea of how that would all work then. Similarly, records, if we look at them quickly, excessive rainfall of 650 mils in 24 hours recorded in Savuti Plains. We're obviously going to link that to the Savuti Plains entity. Bush clearing conducted on 3 hectares of Savuti Plains region, clearing DICRO using access through foliar application. We would link it to bush clearing, and we'd link it to Savuti Plains. Okay, so, and then, sorry, also to DICRO. So I think it's fairly obvious that you can see how it would all link together. And again, if we then had to pull off any one of these entities, you're going to get all of those records and all the details as to what's been linked through to that species type, or that area, or that management type, corrective measures, should I say. Okay, so I think that gives you a fairly good idea of what the profile section can do. So how it's helped us? It's helped us in centralizing information. So we all know, and I've heard lots of conversations with people, the biggest challenge when it comes to intelligence specifically is this old-fashioned silo mentality. Everybody's got little pieces to the puzzle, and when you can put all of those little pieces together, you suddenly get the bigger picture. And we're starting to be able to achieve that in our area, and it's made such a huge difference. And one of the ways we've been able to do that is to centralize all of this information through SMART. It also helps you to retain detailed information on suspects. And it's amazing, when we're busy working on a particular group and focusing on suspects, You know everything about that suspect and you think you remember, but 6 months down the line, you've now worked on 3 other groups, and suddenly something hits you and you think, sure, but I remember that guy, we dealt with it. He did this or somebody did that, and you can't remember. But if you go and pull this off, you've got all those little bits of information. And it's a lot of those silly little things that normally when that information comes through, nobody knows what to do with it. But now you've got something to do. You can create, even if it's a 1-sentence record, you can create it, link it to the profile, to the entity, and when you pull off his profile, you've got that little bit of information. And it's often those little bits of information that actually lead us to the big stuff. So, as I say, remember small bits of information. You can also supply both SAPS officers and wardens with detailed information. So when you give them a profile report, it's not just the basics. Because like most, if you pull off a SAPS, I ask for a SAPS profile on a suspect, which I do get them often. It's basically got name, ID, it's got a criminal record history, and that's about it. Whereas this has got all the little bits of information that are important, talking to this or seen doing that or whatever it might be, all those little individual records as well. It also helps identify potential suspects. And very often we'll have a suspect that we don't know a name for, but we'll give him a nickname and we'll develop a profile on it. And we'll collect all those little bits of information, and something will come in the future where we can link it to one of those little bits of information, and suddenly we can identify that suspect. And then we know who we're dealing with. But if we didn't have that ability and that profiling system in place, we would never be able to make those links and identify them. Okay, so obviously enable us to develop complex law enforcement support services, which is specifically in this country is crucial because our police are just severely under-resourced and under-skilled in many of these areas. Okay, obviously an important thing with this, particularly if you are going to be creating suspect profiles, most countries do have laws about personal information. So in South Africa, we have what's known as the POPI Act, which is the protection of personal information. So for us in South Africa, you need to register as an information officer you register with the information registrar, and then you need to make sure you've got all the correct paperwork from them. You need to have a PIA manual in place, and then what we applied for because we work so closely with the police and we develop intensive information on high-level suspects. We basically go for the top of the syndicates. We have been awarded POPI exemption, so POPI Act actually doesn't apply to us, so we can collect personal information as much as we want. As long as it is for criminal purposes. I obviously can't follow my brother's girlfriend around or anything like that. Okay, tips and suggestions. If you are going to go into this, have a very clear picture of what you want to record, how you want to record it, and why you want to record it. Almost draw yourself a mind map. So create a whole idea first before you go and start developing it. As I did mention in the beginning, surnames always in capital. It's just very useful. I mean, we all end up working in countries foreign to us, or you're dealing with cultures that are different to us, and very often we don't recognize what's a name and what's a surname. But if you start putting it in capital letters, then you can immediately work out what is what. One of the very big mistakes we have had to learn a number of times in SMART is in South Africa, we write case numbers like this, CAS 6709-2020, and very often a photo will get saved with this name. SMART doesn't like forward slashes, and in fact what I've had to then do is delete the entire conservation area off the server, find the erroneous photo, rename it, and then re-upload because it won't sync to anybody else's computer. So just bear that in mind. I now make it a habit. I use dashes instead of forward slashes. But just keep that in mind. And always add in spelling variations. In South Africa, we'll notice even one family will have the same surname, but they'll spell it different ways, even on their ID books. And where we think that comes from is that obviously in generations in the past, when there were a lot of people that couldn't read or write, they would go to somebody to apply for an ID book. They would say their name, and the person would phonetically write it down. And his brother would go to the next counter And that person would phonetically write it down, and you'd get two different surnames, but they're actually the same family. So that's why we always have alternative spellings, and we try and spell it out as well, so that when you're doing a search, that name still comes up as a possibility or that suspect. Very important 3 C's. Your information must be consistent, and complete records are crucial. And without that, you're wasting your time, actually. And very important with data, rubbish in, rubbish out. Just remember that. And that's it. And it is lots of fun when you can start creating connections. As we always say, live for the link. And when you do find those links, and you suddenly link suspects that you've been looking for a long time, it's very exciting. And even more rewarding when you see them in handcuffs. Any questions? Yes, if you put it in, you certainly will. And then I will have to go through it and say, delete. Delete Brennan, not the record. Delete Brennan. Anything else? No. So either I didn't share much information or everyone understands. Yes. You can import CSV files. So if you've got mass data, you can import it. That's a wonderful thing with Smart, is they really have gone out of their way to make it as easy as possible to import from different formats and to export in different formats. So even when you export a profile, I generally do it to PDF, but you can do it to HTML, to PDF, to doc. What else do you use? Yeah. So you can export them to different formats as well. And just so you know how we use it, I started off with Smart. I've been using Smart now for 6, 7, 8 years. So what we will continue, and also because of the ability, Smart has got the ability to run queries within it. It doesn't need an external program. It's got the ability to create its own reports within Smart, and obviously the profiling section. And I use this more than I actually use the main section of Smart. But what we do is we then link through to EarthRanger, because EarthRanger is great operationally. So my guys in the field have got EarthRanger. We actually don't use the app so much. It's more we use the website on like a tablet, etc., so that they can immediately get alerts and follow movements of EarthRanger on the devices. So that's how we use it, but it's great with this integration. And that's why I say, for all of you that are using EarthRanger, you can still use this, because you can set it that your EarthRanger alerts feed through into Smart, create your triggers, and it can go straight through to the profile section. So you could actually do everything in EarthRanger and then just use the profile section in Smart for this aspect. Any other?
How do you work together with others within the profiles? Because you create a picture of suspects and things.
Yes. You've got the full ability to authorize people as to who sees what. I can also set categories, so I could set somebody that they only have access to the Disney profiles, and they can only work on the Disney characters. No, so it sits on my computer, my server. It's not available globally, obviously, because this is very sensitive information. And I've got to give people access to this.
And when someone else has an environment similar in the neighboring country, then you can start sharing.
If your data models are the same, so that your data can match, then yes, you can. We actually are working on something with, so just to take you on a bit of a full circle loop that we've been involved in. So I am a conservationist, my background. In 2007, my brother was murdered. And at the time, I was very involved in Kruger to Canyons Biosphere, setting that up. So you're setting up the whole Kruger area as a UNESCO Biosphere Reserve. And I remember sitting there one day, I was writing a proposal for provincial government about something to do with conservation in the communities. And I sat there and I thought, how can I expect somebody to turn to conservation when safety and security in this country is such an issue. And if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, safety is a base need before one can get to the top level. So I decided to turn my attention away from conservation for a while and start focusing on safety and security. So I actually got involved in our local, let's call it a community safety watch organization, which has now become a very, very successful entity. And from that, we were so successful in taking out crime in our area. The town that I'm from is now known as the safest town in the country because of the success we've implemented. We have very little serious crime. There are lots of it happening around us, but not in the town itself. And so from that, we started getting asked by more and more police specialist units to assist them, and that it was only natural then for me to also take all these new skills and go back to rhino poaching, because obviously that's my passion coming from a conservation field. The other thing as well is just something to keep in mind is that it's much easier to catch a poacher outside a reserve than inside a reserve. Inside a reserve, it's like looking for a needle in a haystack, and he's good at what he does. That's what he does. He knows how to stay hidden. He knows how to conceal his tracks. Outside, there's specific patterns that they follow that's easier to pick up. They drive on roads in specific cars. They've got homes. They've got taverns that they go to. They've got friends that they socialize with. So it's easier to pinpoint known locations that you can monitor and catch them at. And our big goal, which I think we're doing fairly successfully, Willem will be able to confirm or not, is we like to target them before they get to a reserve. So we actually have very low poaching statistics, but that's only because they don't get a chance to poach. We catch them on the outside. So most of our convictions or our arrests are for possession of illegal weapons, because that's what we can charge them for then, and with the intention to poach. So if they've got an axe or anything in the vehicle as well, we can use that to support that information. So that's how we got to that. And then taking it one step further from that, the more we started looking into all of these poaching groups, and basically we started using intelligence to work higher up the syndicates, we're now looking at the very top of the syndicates. And the minute we started doing that, we started linking them to every kind of crime in this country. Our syndicate leaders, which are based on his doorstep, are basically involved in 90% of the major crime in this entire country, including Gauteng, Natal, Eastern Cape, Free State, Limpopo, and Mpumalanga, so all falling under one organized crime syndicate. So that then took me back another circle, now going back to community crime, because it's all linked to the poachers. So we actually have put together a concept now where just before we started this conference here, I was actually in Cape Town meeting with some guys down here about implementing it, where we have put together a smart data model, a set data model on recording community crime that we're going to go and look and be initiating it at all communities, particularly rural communities bordering on reserve areas around the country. So there are ways, and that's how I'm getting back to the question, is you can take it globally, you can share information, and that's the idea behind it, is that if everyone's collecting data on the same data model, that it's very easy to share that data. And where at the moment our police cannot give you updated stats on what the crime situation is in South Africa, through that process we'll be able to do that.
Are you still based around this?
Yes, I will always be there. Okay, perfect. Are you also, do you go up there often?
For the next 6 months I will be there. I have background in this.
Perfect, please do.
I was wondering if you have questions, if we can discuss in detail and see how
Perfect.
we make it even stronger.
Yes.
Strong basis.
Yes,
A few things are what we call low-hanging fruit.
yes, yes. Admittedly, I will put it on the table. As I said, I was taught to count grasses. I'm a conservationist. I got into this through passion. I saw the gap. I've had to learn a hell of a lot very quickly. I will say, and I'm not embarrassed to say it because it's probably the first time in my life I can say it, that I've really found something I'm good at. I know that what I've done, we've had a huge impact, and we can see the results. Thank you for nodding, Willem. I like to see that. But we need every bit of help we can. As I say, this is not something I I've never had any formal training in it. We just take whatever opportunities and resources are presented to us. And at the moment, resources are very low. So any support would be greatly appreciated.